Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Our Perspective podcast. And you may be thinking, okay, things look a little different. I'm not sitting on the couch with Mary Grace or Carmen. Charlie's not around. I'm all by myself because this is a bonus content. As I was reviewing our podcast for the last couple weeks, I realized that we had a lot to share. And in between all of our crazy stories and giving you guys practical take home, I wanted to kind of reiterate that practical take home because these things were really so pivotal in our families' lives. So in episode 8, which is everything okay with your heart? Learning to unpack what we carry, we really talked about what it looked like to have a healthy heart, to raise kids with healthy hearts, to raise kids to be able to communicate how they feel, what they're feeling, why they feel it, or why they're feeling it, all of those things. A lot of the information that I talked about came from this incredible book called Enemies of the Heart. It's an oldie but goodie. It's Pastor Andy Stanley wrote it. And to me, it was just an incredible book that really talked about a healthy heart. This last chapter talks about what we want best for our kids. And it went over some questions, which I'll talk about in a minute. We did talk about it in the podcast, but I wanted to give you guys just a little bit more meat about these questions, why we ask these questions, and why this literally changed the trajectory of my family's life. It created this foundation that this whole podcast, why I'm even creating this podcast, is all about, because I want you guys as parents to create really safe environments for your kids to be able to share with you so they can become bold followers of Christ, because you are their example. You are the ones that are teaching them. And right here in this book, I love what it says here. It says, we cannot control everything our children experience, but we can influence how they process what life sends their way. We can teach them how to guard their hearts against the inevitable firestorms of life. No one impacts the health of a child's heart more like mom and dad. Intentionally or unintentionally, on purpose or by accident, we build into our children or take away. So we build into our children or we take it away. This may be our greatest responsibility as parents. And I remember my kids being probably Thomas was like 6 or 7, maybe Carmen was 5, and Mary Grace was 3. And I read this book, and I really felt that heaviness of that responsibility, because they were going to go off to college one day. They were going to go off into their own relationships with friends, husbands, wives, children of their own. And I wanted to make sure when they were responsible for their own hearts that it was a healthy heart. That was really, really important to me. So one of the things that we did in our home was learn to unpack our hearts, was to learn how to communicate what we were feeling, what we were thinking with these simple questions that's in this book. One of the, and I'm going to go over some of these questions. Is everything okay with your heart? Is everything okay with your heart? I don't care how old your kids were. I'm telling you, Mary Grace was 3 or 4 when I started asking these questions. They could be rolling around on the floor. They could be saying silly things. Lean in, moms and dads, because you never know what they're going to share and what's going to matter. But right now, at these young ages, if you have littles, you are creating a rhythm in their lives that they feel safe enough eventually to start answering these questions with you. And if you have older kids, middle school, or even high school, I really encourage you to maybe create a date night with them and have some time where you can ask some of these questions, right? So I just was lucky enough that I read this book, and I started when the kids were really little, and we spent a whole year doing this every single night at bedtime. I would get all of my kids in one room, and I would start sharing this. And we shared this in our podcast. It was with these jars. We had this unhealthy heart jar and a healthy heart jar. And then with that unhealthy heart jar, I would like kind of have like a potato peel or a banana peel or something, and then that would symbolize things like unforgiveness, things like guilt, and I would explain this is what unforgiveness looks like. This is what guilt looks like. This is what being angry looks like. This is what jealousy looks like, and then I would put and I would maybe pick one or two a night. I wouldn't talk about all of them, but I would pick one or two, and then I would put it in the jar and I'd close it up. And through time, you saw this jar, the things in this jar begin to rot and to begin like to darken that jar. And it was a very visual experience for my kids to see this jar become really healthy compared to the jar with a healthy heart, where we symbolize, okay, this is what it looks like if we unpack the jealousy, if we unpack the anger, if we unpack the unforgiveness. This is what a healthy heart looks like. And I would tell them all the time how important it was for me as their mom to raise them to always have a healthy heart where they were able to talk to me, talk to their mentors, talk to their friends about the things that they were feeling. So some of these questions like, is everything okay with your heart? Are you mad at anybody today? This is a really good question to ask them, like, did anybody make you mad? And sometimes it's like, yeah, Johnny pushed me down in the playground. Okay, this is a really great time to like talk to them, like, well, did he mean to push you down in the playground? You know, maybe it was an accident. And now if you're holding on to that anger and that mad, that's what unforgiveness looks like. So maybe let's go talk to Johnny tomorrow and ask him if he meant to push you down on the playground or whatever the incident could be. But like, if you don't forgive Johnny, then you're like, well, I'm not going to be his friend anymore. That's what unforgiveness looks like. And we don't want to have that. So to encourage my kids to go back to school maybe and have healthier conversations, or say, you know what, I am Johnny's friend. He might accidentally have pushed me. I didn't realize that. And even if they don't articulate it that way, they start processing. They start thinking this way. And then as they grow up, they just start incorporating these questions into their lives. Another question is, did anybody hurt your feelings today? So this is a really great question. Sometimes they would tattletale on their siblings. Yes, Carmen hurt my feelings when she said this today, or Mary Grace hurt my feelings when she said this today. This was a really great opportunity for us to talk about what it looks like to ask for forgiveness. So if something happened and Thomas would say, yeah, Carmen said this to me today, and it really hurt my feelings. Then we're all in the room. I could look at Carmen. I'm like, hey, Carmen, did you mean to say that to Thomas? Or, hey, why would you say that to Thomas? Do you see how that hurt his feelings? Yes, I see how that hurt his feelings. I'm like, do you think that you can ask for forgiveness? Do you think you apologize to Thomas? And this was a rule in our house. When we would apologize to each other, we couldn't say, it's okay, because it's not okay. It's not okay that you hurt his feelings. So Carmen would just say, oh, I'm so sorry that I hurt your feelings. Do you accept my apology? And Thomas is like, yes, I accept your apology. And usually I'd make him hug it out. Well, not usually. I always made them hug it out. But that was a big thing in our home too, is asking for forgiveness and then saying, yes, I accept your apology, instead of saying it's okay. So that was one of the things that we did. And then did anybody break a promise? This is a huge one. And this is another rule that I had in our home. I really rarely promised my kids anything because I was the main culprit of breaking promises. Yes, I'm really busy today. Mommy's trying to do laundry and kind of clean today. I promise we'll go to the park tomorrow. And then I wouldn't really know my schedule for the next day, and I'd totally forget that, oh, we're going to go lunch with someone, we're going to do this with someone. We don't have time to go to the park. And then the next day would come around, and if you have kids, they do not forget anything. Hey, Mom, are we going to the park today? No, baby, I totally forgot. We're going to lunch with so-and-so today, and we're not going to have time to go to the park. Then what would the next response be? But Mom, you promised. And so this is something that I really thought was important, for not to always say, hey, promise my kids anything. But if I did break a promise, I wanted them to be able to come to me and share that. I didn't want them to hold on to that. I didn't want them to start thinking, you know what, maybe I can't trust Mom, or maybe Mom, what she says is not always true. I wanted them to come to me so I could explain, hey, this is why I promised you this and why we can't do it. So after a lot of fails of promising them things that I couldn't live up to or we couldn't do, I I just made a rule with myself that I didn't really promise him anything. And when they said, hey, Mom, can we go to the park tomorrow because we don't have time today? Mommy's going to try her very best for us to go to the park tomorrow. But right now, I don't know what we're doing. But once I do, I'll come back to you and I'll let you know if we can go to the park tomorrow. Or, hey, Mommy's going to try her very best to do this, but I can't promise you that right now. And so that saved a lot of, Mom, you promised conversations. And is there anything that you need to tell me? This is such a great question when kids are starting to kind of do those little white lies. Like when they're, elementary school age, they start like kind of maybe these little tiny white lies. This is what brings that out. Is there anything you need to tell me? And let me tell you, we started working on this and, I would ask all of these questions. And if something happened at school and we're at the dinner table, usually they're like, Mom, I have something to tell you. Before I even got the email, before I even got to them at nighttime and asked them, is there anything you need to tell me? They would start confessing things because they knew that this question was coming, or they knew that this was kind of the rhythm in our house. Like whether it was that night or anything else, I would always ask, do you have something to tell me? When I felt like, there's a check in my spirit that they're not really being honest with me, or I feel like this is a little bit of a white lie, I didn't let those white lies go, moms and dad. Like, it's just a white lie. It's not a big deal. It was a big deal for us in our home. So when I knew that that little white lie was happening, I would just kind of look at them and was like, hey, do you have something to tell me? And then because we started these rhythms and these disciplines in our home, like they would start sharing like, yeah, Mom, I'm so sorry. I lied. I actually didn't clean the bathroom like you asked me to. Those little white lies like, hey, did you empty the dishwasher? Yeah. I got it. I did it. Those little white lies. Those were the things that we started working on. But even those really mattered to me because I didn't want those little white lies to turn into really big lies when they were in middle school or high school. So these were such great questions for one of the great questions for us to ask. And hey, are you worried about anything? This is when from such a young age, we started talking about if they were anxious about something, if they were worried about something. So we could talk about it like when they were little. So they did not grow up to be very anxious kids. They didn't grow up to be worrying about so many things because we talked about it like throughout their whole childhood. Like I would see like, hey, if there's a test the next day, like Carmen was my one that would really like kind of get anxious for tests that are coming up. So I knew that because we had talked about it because I had asked her these questions. So I knew that about her. So when she got into like 4th and 5th grade and the tests got a little bit harder, it was really important for me to like quiz her or talk to her or make sure she felt confident the next day going into that test or into whatever that she was going into that next day. I remember like her with horseback riding, we'll talk about this in the podcast, like when she would go show, like she would get really anxious or she would, like anything, you're competing, you always get kind of like a little bit of butterflies in your tummy. So we would talk about those things and she was able like I know that, I'm so nervous today, or I'm so anxious about this today, or like I just really want to do well. And we would talk about that. They would give us opportunities to stop and pray with each other, like if something big was happening. I remember Thomas was taking an entrance exam into high school. And we talked about it so much. Like he had gone and gone to a learning center and like learned how to take tests well so he could do well on this test. And I remember like a week before the test, he came and said, Mom, I'm really anxious about this. I really want to do well. And because we had done this, he was able to articulate that with me. It gave me this idea to call all of his mentors, the men that had really started pouring into his life, to come over to dinner. I cooked them dinner. We sat, we had a great dinner that night. And then they all sat and prayed over Thomas the day before he was going to take the entrance exam. But if he didn't share that with me, I don't know if I would even thought to have done that. So see, all of these questions really help your kids articulate that and create these safe environments for them to share like, hey, Mom, I'm not being honest, or yeah, Mom, I'm kind of anxious about this. So let's talk about it. Let's pray over it. Let's make sure that we are prepared for this test or whatever's coming up. And these things that just made, like, sometimes people say, or maybe my kids are like, you're such a great mom. But I feel like because they were able to share these things and articulate these things with me, that's what helped me be a better mom, because I knew what to do next because they shared these things with me. Mom, I'm scared. Mom, I'm mad at mom. Somebody really hurt my feelings. I don't know how to deal with it. I'm really sad. And that created me and Carmen. You'll hear this in future podcasts, like for us to go on these long walks and have really great conversations, and helped her articulate friendships and how to deal with different relationships because she was fearful, because she didn't trust. It helped us do all of those things because they were able to share and talk with me. So this is a really great book. Those are the questions that I asked. Again, if you have littles, like, just create this rhythm. It doesn't have to be every night. Honestly, I can tell you really honestly, at that time in my life, I was really fearful. I was so scared that having them grow up in a single parent home, I was so worried that something was going to go massively wrong with my children. So that's why I'm like, we're doing this every night. We have to make sure we learn how to impact our hearts. So you may not have to do that in your home. I did in mine, but creating like rhythms, like maybe once a week to lay in bed and ask these questions, or maybe you have a middle schooler and they don't want you to lay with them anymore, but taking them out on a date and asking some of these questions, or hey, like when you pick them up from school, having these questions like somewhere where you can remember them, and maybe on the way to school, instead of like, did you have a good day? Yeah. How was what happened? I don't know. Asking them more intentional questions like, hey, so how was your day today? It was good. Did anyone make you mad? Did anybody hurt your feelings today? Or did you have a good day? Like, it helps you, like maybe it's like just driving home from school is a great time to ask these questions. So get creative. I know you guys can, but this is something that we did in our home. It was so helpful. I feel like it really did create this really strong foundation where my kids, to this day, at 22, 20, and 18, feel safe enough to come to me and share things, or mess ups, or just things that are happening in their world, or relationship issues that we can not. It's me giving advice, because I can't give advice anymore to my 22-year-old son, right? I can, but he's not always asking for it. So sometimes when he comes, he just wants me to listen, and then we can process more of what he's feeling than me like, okay, this is what you got to do. Because believe me, if you have a 22-year-old son or daughter, they don't want to hear that. They just want you to listen and lean in, and just create safe places for them to kind of process those things out on their own. So I hope this was helpful, a little bit of a bonus. And so I hope everyone's having a great week, and we will see you next week on our Perspective podcast. Go out and leave people better than you found them.